Welcome to What CEOs Talk About. Do you wonder what CEOs talk about behind closed doors? How they bring their vision to reality? How do they overcome and succeed through adversity? We share that and so much more with each episode. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, my name is Martin Hunter. I am the host of What CEOs Talk About, where we translate vision into frontline strategy. Today, our guest is Kerris Hougardy, who is the VP of People Services North America at Colliers. So thank you very much for being a guest, Kerris.
Great to be here, Martin. Thank you.
Thank you. For those who are listening and not watching, we'll talk about what the nice little card that is behind Kerris. Kerris, today, what is the title of the show? What are you picking as the title of the show?
So today, what we're going to talk about is hashtag GetStDone, resilience and inclusivity.
Fabulous. So tell us, why hashtag GetStDone?
Well, there's a story there. My team actually, over the past number of years, kindly gave me the hashtag GetStDone. Basically, because part of my nature is to drive things forward, move things forward, clear obstacles, roadblocks that might be in the way of making things happen. I think it's one of my few superpowers is to be able to get shit done and be able to kind of move things forward, achieve results, make things happen, and move some of those roadblocks. So they very kindly gave me the hashtag. Plaques like this, I have a mug, I have pens, I have journals, all kinds of paraphernalia that over the years they've bought me to reinforce the message.
That's so cool.
It's very sweet. It is. It's very sweet.
Oh, we're going to put that at the bottom of this episode. That's too funny. Hashtag GetStDone. Kerris, what is Colliers?
Oh, so Colliers is a fully diversified commercial real estate company. So what that means to you and I is that we're a professional services firm. Essentially, our focus is on everything from sales and leasing of property through to property management, through to valuation and tax advice around commercial real estate, and some project management as well. So all of the services that you would see for commercial real estate owners and occupiers.
And what is your role when you say VP of People Services North America? What is your job? What do you do?
Good question. When we figure that out.
Everything.
I will write it down and tell my bosses. My job essentially is to run what is our human resources team for North America. So that involves a number of different departments from payroll, benefits, and compensation, so making sure all of our people get paid, through to our HR technology and strategy, through to kind of leading our human resources business partner teams in employee relations, learning and development, talent acquisition, and all of that good stuff.
I love the fact that it's called people, right? There's so many businesses. When you look at, there's not that many businesses that are fully automated with robotics. The people are still at the foundation of getting stuff done or getting shit done, which is great motivation. And it's always, a lot of people say, "Oh, human resources, that's a faux pas," or human capital. Or there's no good way of saying it. People are people. Just call it people. Call it what it is.
And we provide a service. Like my team is responsible for providing services to our people. That's essentially, we say it how it is. And as an organization that doesn't make anything, doesn't own anything, doesn't build anything, our core capital is our people. We're a people-oriented organization. We're a knowledge-based organization, and it's our people that make the difference. That's our competitive advantage. So to call it anything else would be disingenuous, I think.
It's funny how $1 million, I don't even know if it's $1 billion corporation that says, "I don't do nothing, don't sell nothing, don't do nothing." And yet we make $3 billion. Oh, funny how that is. So in the pre-show, Kerris and I were debating, okay, so I always let the guest pick the title of the show. And Kerris was very divided into two things, right? So when we talk about the show, what CEOs talk about, well, what do CEOs talk about? So resilience, you got promoted. So let's talk about resilience first. Okay. You got promoted, something like 12 days before COVID-19 was officially announced, or maybe 12 minutes before. It's like, oh, Kerris, here's your promotion. Oh, did you know about COVID?
It went a bit like that. Yep, February last year.
Okay, so tell us. So what were you before, and why did they trust you with this new leadership role? Why you, right? And then why did you pick resilience?
Yeah, good question. So my role prior, so when I joined Colliers, I joined in summer of 2017, and I joined as the director for talent acquisition for North America.
Okay.
And it encompassed basically looking after all of our recruitment functions across the US and Canada for all of our recruitment. And we've got about somewhere between 7,500 and 8,000 people across North America. So, there's a large volume of recruitment that gets done. So that was my prior role. And just as I was saying before about how people are core to our organization, when they were looking to replace our prior VP of People Services, I put my hand up and said I was interested. And at the time, they'd entrusted me on an interim basis to babysit it while they ran a full search. And I said to them that I think that at least 70% of this role is around talent, and that is my superpower. Like I've worked in the talent space for pretty much my entire career. At least 20 years of my career have been in the talent space. And so, if we think about what's most important for us at Colliers, and at an enterprise level, right the way through down to individual markets, we talk about the recruitment, development, and retention of our people as being a number one priority because we're a people organization. And so the gaps in my experience could be accommodated for, so long as we had, some really solid foundations around the talent space. And so that was really where I kind of sold my candidacy, if you like, and kind of put myself up for the job. And I think that, coming into this role, right at the beginning of a pandemic and taking that on, a lot of the traditional human resources functions almost had to get parked, right? Because, we had to really focus in on the health and safety of our people. That had to be the top priority. And because none of us had gone through a global pandemic before, we had to be super creative, very innovative. We were making this up on a day-by-day basis, but really kind of guided by one of our core values, which is do what's right for our people, our communities, and our clients. And that do what's right value really kind of helped us to kind of navigate those pretty scary early days of trying to figure it out. So, when I think about the first year of my tenure in this role, it really has been about leveraging the expertise of my team, who are phenomenal and are each experts in their own field, whilst we really kind of focused in, and I was able to lead the charge around making sure that the health and safety of our people was priority, as well as working with our business leaders on understanding the implications and impacts from an economic and a financial perspective as well.
And so when we talk about resilience, let's be specific. How did it affect you, and why did you choose you? Because you said that you had also started your MBA just a few weeks before, a month before.
I know it sounds crazy, and people are like, how did you get through it? And I'm like, I actually have no idea. But I think it was in large part down to resilience. And so I started my MBA studies in September 2019 at SFU here in Vancouver. And at the time of signing up for the program and of starting the program, I was coasting. I was in a role that I knew really well. I had a great team beneath me. I had great peers. I knew what I was doing. I felt that I could incorporate the extra work and activity of an MBA into my life at that time. It felt like the right time. Of course, nobody could have predicted necessarily a promotion and a pandemic to come.
No, you couldn't do that. That's not one of your superpowers?
Not one of the superpowers, no. like I say, I only have a few, and that's definitely
A few.
not.
I like how you say you have a few, not even one. I have one superpower. That's it. You got a few.
That's too careful. So doing an MBA already required me to have found an extra 25 to 30 hours a week to be able to do that. And it's a 20-month course, so literally just finished up earlier this month.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Relief. It was an interesting time. And then you throw on the fact that I'm also a wife and a mother, and a daughter and a daughter-in-law and a sister, and all of those other pieces that everybody else kind of incorporates in their life. And you're trying to homeschool a grumpy teenage daughter in grade 9 with grade 9 math. That's really not my strong suit. That's definitely not another superpower. I found that last year was particularly heavy. Like nothing let up. It just seemed to be piling on more and more. There was more responsibility. Oh, and then there's this. Oh, and by the way, why don't you deal with this? Oh, and by the way, there's that. So, the pandemic brought, a huge amount of additional pressure. Then, being in the role that I am, we had in June of last year, there was the tragic death of George Floyd. And obviously the events that came after that as well, which I think woke up the world, if they weren't already awake, to the fact that there was a really serious issue that also needed to be dealt with. And of course, it's another people issue. So although we were already working hard in that space, we really had to elevate and accelerate the work that we were doing in order to be able to make sure that we were responding appropriately and genuinely to the concerns of not just our people, but also our clients and our communities as well. So they just kept coming last year. It just okay, this and now do this, and so it kind of builds and builds. So that's why I think that resilience is such a underrated attribute that I think that if people can kind of get their heads around and master to a certain degree, is so incredibly valuable. Because when you're thrown into all of these things and really do need to be responsive in a positive way, then resilience is absolutely critical.
So what is resilience? When I hear the word resilience, I think like leadership or communication. That's a broad term. So what in your mind, what are some of the behaviors or action that you would associate? You'd say a resilience bracket, and then you put a list of behaviors. What would that be?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that resilience can incorporate a number of different things. I think that for leaders and CEOs, executive leaders within organizations, resilience can often mean different things than for other people in different parts of their career or at different stages in their career. And I think that at that leadership level, resilience comes with empathy, compassion, understanding, and an ability to listen. And if you can maintain those key things as part of your repertoire of skills in how you show up as a leader, then being able to take on board the concerns not just of yourself and your family and your friends, but of the people and your colleagues and your co-workers and your clients, then that resilience becomes a little bit easier. So I think that, first of all, it's really important on how you show up. I think the other thing is really about understanding, like, where are your limits? Like, how do you assess when you're reaching the point of burnout, when you're reaching the point of being overwhelmed, of stress, and being able to be really self-aware and really honest with yourself about where you're at in your particular mental state, and being able to recognize when it's important to be able to step aside. I incorporated into my routine last year, every day I would cut off at 5:30 and take the dog for a walk. Literally leave the house, take the dog, don't want to speak to anybody, don't want to see anybody. I get out into the forest and the mountains, even if it's just half an hour, and just decompress, be with nature, get outside, whether it's snowing, raining, sun, whatever it was, and just have that moment to myself. I found that really, really important, to be able to just kind of take a moment for myself and to recharge some of those batteries, if you like. So I think that's really important to recognize that.
I think you surprised everybody who is listening. Because when you say get shit done and then you go resilience, and a lot of people go, okay, let's double down, let's buckle down. And then you said the word empathy. You said listen. So really, resilience is about understanding and being aware around, and especially in the people side of things, if you want to build, some people that have built great resilience within their companies, 2008, Simon Sinek, he says, some companies in 2008, the CEO got everybody in a town hall and said, okay, pardon my French, we're fucked. Mm-hmm. And he's like, okay, if everybody takes, or how are we going to solve this? And then somebody said, well, what happens if we all take 4 weeks off, unpaid leave, all of us? That means that everybody gets to pay to keep their job. Now, everybody's pay goes down, but everybody gets to keep their job. So isn't that resilience as an organization? But if he didn't have what you had just mentioned, that empathy, that ability to listen, to contribute as an organization, I think that what you just said just is absolutely wonderful. And, we see get shit done, and everybody who thinks that, oh, let's work harder, let's do this, let's do that. No, let's listen. And then the second component is awareness. Okay, so I've listened to everybody else around me, and everybody's up and some people are down. And then you said, okay, well, where's my thermometer? Where's my gauge? Where's my oil gauge? Where's my temperature? Am I too hot? Am I excited? Holy crap, I got an MBA. My daughter just had a hard time with math. There's just, we think about get shit done as Kerris is a beast, just pile it on. But the way that you address it, I think it's just a great mind shift. So thank you, Kerris. That's
of course,
a great piece of advice.
And it comes with, don't get me wrong, there were some long days.
Oh, of course.
Full weekends. There was some crazy hours worked last year. I'm not going to lie, because the volume and the enormity of what we were dealing with demanded at that point, right? But even then, still having to take time out to say, okay, how are you feeling? How am I feeling? Let's talk about this. Where are we at? How do we get through this? And one of the things that I always try and do, and this isn't necessarily a COVID thing, but prior to that, is if I'm showing up for a meeting, then I'm showing up for you in your moment. Whatever's just happened, like 5 minutes ago, whoever I've spoken to, whether it's math homework, whether the dog's just barfed all over the carpet, like whatever I'm dealing with, I'm going to stop dealing with that, and I'm showing up for you. So we're on a one-to-one, we're in a meeting, whatever it is, then I'm going to come with the same calm tone. I'm going to come with the same positive attitude, and we'll work through it. Like I can't be bringing my baggage into those conversations.
I apply this to the T. If I have 2 minutes, and this is my wife, Tracy, when I was traveling and I was around the world, I was in Africa for 8 weeks at a time. I'd be in Europe and I'd be sad. And I'd say, well, I'm not home. I'm not being a dad. And Tracy would say, the only thing that I care about is when you're at home, you're a good dad. Yeah. And that's the only thing that resonated with me, not just at home, but also through my career. Yeah. With COVID, it soon became Zoom after Zoom after Zoom after Zoom. And I said, whoa. I'm not taking the time to really reflect and think, okay, who am I missing? Who am I sitting with? Am I mentally prepared? And regardless, and people think that, an hour, you need an hour to do this. You need it. Even if you spend 15 minutes with somebody, you just need to say, okay, I'm here for you. How can I help? Yep. Okay. What's your good news? What's your top 2 things that you need to address on? And where do you need help? And I go through my meetings like that all day long, and everybody knows to come prepared. And if I want to say, hey, you want to shoot the shit? We shoot the shit, and that's okay. Yeah. But when it's time for business, you don't need an hour to talk about 15 minutes of getting stuff. If you need to identify, discuss, and solve, then that's different. But always come prepared to the person that you're with. Yeah. Some leaders, and they pull their phone out, they leave their phone on the table. Oh, I'm listening to what you're doing. No, you don't. No, you're not. Biologically, It is impossible to multitask. You're task switching. Yep. Now, it is a proven biological skill that is different for females and males. Females are much better at task switching than men. Men, when we get focused, we forget our wife or kids. We just get the job done, which is not necessarily good in certain situations, and vice versa, right? It's complementary. And that's where I think that the term diversity it's not about, the pendulum swung one way and the other way. It's just bring everybody at the table at the same time. It's just, and that brings inclusivity and diversity. That was another key component that you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, one of my other roles, one of my other hats that I wear is a co-executive champion for our North American Diversity and Inclusion Program, which has been a passion of mine for many, many years. Throughout my career, in whichever industry I've been working, I've always, found myself or found opportunities to get involved in diversity and inclusion. And I'm a genuine believer that diversity produces better results, whatever those may be. But diversity definitely produces better results. And you have to have an inclusive environment in order to be able to encourage that diversity.
Agreed.
So it goes hand in hand. And so, as part of my role on the diversity and inclusion front, it's been and there's definite crossover because we've seen how the pandemic and various other events over the past 18 months have impacted to a larger or lesser degree different individuals within our organization, within our communities, within our friend groups. People have been impacted in different ways based on a number of demographics that show up in their lives, and that I think is something where we've had to really double down as an organization. We call it turn up the volume. The music was already playing. We've been playing this music for many, many years, but really turn up the volume on it this year, and engaging, our senior leaders right across our organization, including my two CEOs of the US and Canada that I report into, who really, have been at the forefront of helping us to turn up that volume, and not through coaxing, but through, genuine passion and interest from themselves as well. So it's been a really challenging year from the perspective of some of the events that we've seen happen across the US and Canada and the rest of the world, but certainly it's given a lot of organizations, including our own, the opportunity to turn up the volume on diversity and inclusion.
So what was before Mr. Floyd? What was the direction? What needed to be changed, and what did Mr. Floyd's death bring as events that actually, so, it's all about getting shit done. So what were you able to implement that wasn't there before Mr. Floyd and that happened after Mr. Floyd?
I'll tell you the one thing that's had a critical, positive impact on our ability to address this, and that is opening up the conversation. Just being able to have the conversation, have the tough conversations, not stay silent, not feel like it's not your job, it's not your responsibility, and be able to really open up the doors to conversations that matter. That has done so much to spur the momentum around action that come off the back of those conversations. But genuinely, just being able to, I remember, after the riots, shortly after George Floyd's death, and I think it was a Sunday evening, and I just remember having spent most of the day just kind of trawling through social media, looking at all of the horrible and horrific things that were happening, and just being in tears for most of that day, and thinking, how do I show up to work tomorrow? How can I show up to work tomorrow and just pretend it's a normal Monday? I can't do that. And so I spent a long time kind of crafting some messaging for my team around, what I was feeling, what I was going through, what I witnessed, what my thoughts were, how I felt we could do things differently, to share that with them on the Monday and say, we can't stay silent around this. We have to have these conversations. You might not know what to say. You might say it wrong. You might not get it in the first instance, but we're all here to learn. We're all here to, kind of self-correct as well as, rely on each other to have each other's backs, to correct behaviors, terminology, whatever it might be. But having the conversation is so important. And just by opening up those doors and starting to have those conversations around what really matters has enabled us to really accelerate a lot of our programs, initiatives, and the awareness within our organization that it's everybody's response. It's not an HR thing. Mm-hmm. It's everybody's responsibility.
Leadership, HR, safety, people think that it's a department. It's no, it's not. It's something that you own as a leader to be able to provide good leadership to people, managing their performance by providing success feedback, guidance feedback, and safety is the same way, right? So safety never dies, but HR never dies also. I've got a funny story. So one of the companies that I work with, we had an initiative and the company's got explosive growth. We're growing astronomical rate. And I said, well, hey, hold on a second. Let's take the new kids. And when I mean new kids is not necessarily the younger generation, but the new entries with less seniorities. And I say, let's take that group of people so that they can put their name on a project. Everybody else has put their name on the project. So, hey, how about we let these, I'll coach them, I'll lead them, we'll facilitate and elevate them, and we'll reach out if we need anything. So we've got a young lady who sits in, she's marketing. And we've been having these meetings for a month now, every Wednesday, and everything's cool. And she said, you know what? I have to be very careful because I was in the previous company. I had to do a presentation to these 50-year-old grumpy guys who were just this and that and this and that. And everybody's just stopping and they're kind of looking at me. And because everybody knows that I'm turning 50 this year. And she's just going on. And I said, just for the sake, I said, Mary, do you know that I'm 50? And then she just looks at me and I said, do you know that I'm white, right? I'm Caucasian, right? I was like, oh. And I was like, so you're being sexist, ageist. And I was like, but you see, this is what we're talking about. It's okay. You're allowed to make mistakes. And not because I'm an old white guy that it doesn't make me sensitive to the situation. Yeah. She profusely apologized. And I said, it's all good. But we have to call it out and have fun about it. Because, I mean, and I don't want to, I've been in Africa where I've lined up and I've been curious. When I first went to Africa, I don't know the Islamic religion as well as I should. So I was very curious. And so I asked, I said, hey, do you think I can attend one of the prayers with the imam? And he said, why? Why would you? And I'm the only white guy in 100 kilometers. There's just me. And says, you're interested? Yeah, I want to learn. So this desire to learn, this desire to have the conversation. So what is the top conversation at the CEO level when you're two CEOs, unlucky you, sorry. When you're two CEOs, what is their gap? When they go, hey, Kerris, am I good? Are we good? How can we improve inclusivity and diversity? What's the thing that you tell them? Like at Colliers, well, and I'm sure Colliers is, like you've mentioned, they're up, they're trending, they want to be better. What's the one area that you go, this is what we need to do better?
Yeah, and I don't think there's one thing. It's really a approach, but I will say, I although I do have two bosses, two CEOs, not everybody may want to sign up for that, but I have to say I'm incredibly lucky. They are both. They're both very much curious about learning more about what they can do as individuals and what they can do to lead organizations to be better in this space. And that's phenomenal. It makes my job a lot easier.
Of course.
So they do regularly ask the question, what else can we do? Like, what else do we need to do? And so, some of the areas that we've got involved in this year in Canada, for example, our CEO signed the Black North Pledge. So very much involved with, really looking at how we can increase diversity within our organization specific to the Black population. in the US, we actually created an inner task force of Black professionals to be advisors to our US CEO and say, okay, so, what's it like to be a Black professional working at Colliers? Like, what are we doing well? What are we missing? Where are the gaps? Where can we do better? What should we stop doing, keep doing, start doing? All of those good things. And that's been a huge benefit to our CEO in the US in being able to really understand, in the field, what is it people are experiencing and how can we show up better as an organization? And so really listening to what our Black professionals are telling us. And so that's been incredibly helpful. And so we've set that up and we've had a really regular cadence, and a lot of the initiatives that we've rolled out since George Floyd's death have been on the back of those conversations. So rather than, follow a trend or, oh gosh, they're appointing a chief diversity officer, we must do that. Or they're doing this recruitment program, we have to do that. We've actually said, okay, what do people want? What's important? What's going to provide us with, our people with the biggest return on investment? And let's go after that. So let's get that shit done. That's what's been really helpful. And so that willingness for them both to put themselves out there and be vulnerable and say, look, I don't know. Both of them are middle-aged white men. And so they're not grumpy, fortunately, which is good, but they're definitely, a typical demographic in the commercial real estate space. And so for them to put themselves out there, be vulnerable and say, I don't know what I don't know. I need help. I need guidance. I need advice. I need counsel, and to ask for the help and to put themselves in a vulnerable position where they're saying that they don't have the answer and they don't know, I think has just been a huge step in order for us to be able to say, okay, well, let's dig into this together. Let's work together and figure this out. And we've drawn in other executive leaders right across the organization who have, willingly put their hand up and said, how do I help? What can I do better?
Yeah, because it's not good to put double standards, because I was the recipient in my very young age of double standard, right? So they said, oh, well, before I joined the military, I wanted to join the police force. And they said, well, unfortunately, we're recruiting Black men and not white men. And so there was a double standard. And then I know for a fact that there was a double standard for women who wanted to join the firefighting force, right? So there was a lesser standard. And I don't think that's the solution either. And that swinging the pendulum the other way is not the answer. And I think that's where everybody, especially for us who are Generation X, middle-aged white men, we're kind of seen as the, Mr. Simpson's boss, the guy of the nuclear power plant.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. What's his name? Anyways, he's when you think of, I had an interview with Uta Preus from Will Creative, and she said, I don't want to be recognized as CEO because I see CEO as a very stagnant, directive, white male. And that's what she saw. And it's not fair to us to also put us into a group where, I join Women in Mining because I want my daughter I want to participate in the future of my daughter to become an engineer. So it's swinging the pendulum the other way. And it's very difficult for men in our position. So how do we demonstrate? How do we literally get shit done to saying, well, I think that opening the door in the conversation is the right way to do, saying, okay, whoever the best person is to get the job is not satisfactory anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it's a couple of things. There's a few things. It's about being intentional. Like, unless you show up with intentionality around, okay, I want to create a diverse workforce. I want to have an inclusive culture. Unless you show up with that kind of intentionality, it's never going to happen. So you have to be really intentional about it. That doesn't mean quotas, but it means let's be intentional about this. If we're going to run a management development program, which we do, let's make sure that in each of the modules, in each of the areas in which we're asking our managers to learn, we include or we add in that diversity and inclusion lens. So we're intentional about it every step of the way. It's not saying, oh, and here's a module on D&I that you have to do as well. It's like, let's take D&I and we add it into every single other element in finance, in engagement, in communication, like in all of the pieces we're asking you to learn about. What's the D&I lens on this, and how do we include that with all of our conversations? And that's how we're looking to kind of build out all of our programs and our platforms. Is not by saying, oh, and we do D&I. It's no, D&I weaves itself through every single program and practice that we have, and you have to be intentional about it.
Yeah, because it's a fine line. We had another company that I deal with. We went for an accounting position, senior accounting, and we had that D&I specifically. And we as the SLT, the conversation was, well, hold on a second, there's a whole bunch of white names and there's two names that are not white. Is that wrong? Is that wrong to consider? Is that wrong to think about? And so I said, I said, let's talk about this. Is it fair to hire somebody who is of lesser quality because of their last name? And
this thing with recruitment is that at not any stage would I ever say that we have to hire somebody that's not qualified to do the job. But here's the thing. We have to be way, way better, all of us, at providing a shortlist of candidates that is diverse.
Correct.
And so the chances of us hiring a fully qualified, diverse candidate are much higher. Like if the candidate pool isn't there, if the applications aren't there, we have to do better. We have to work harder. And until we've worked hard enough to get a diverse slate of candidates to the interview stage, then what we're providing to the leaders is just pick the best.
Mm-hmm.
And the chances are that there's going to be more individuals picked that are diverse because that's what the pool of choice was given to them. But if we don't do a good enough job at providing candidates with diverse backgrounds, diverse, demographics, diverse, thought, all of those pieces, then we're not doing a good enough job. And managers are then forced into a position where the best person for the job might be a white male.
Mm.
So it's about making sure that we're setting ourselves up for success and not saying, pick somebody who's second rate for the job just because they're diverse. Mm-hmm. We're saying, pick the best person for the job. And there's a high chance they'll be diverse because your shortlist is diverse.
Mm-hmm. It is. I mean, for certain locations like Vancouver, it's pretty irrelevant. I shouldn't say irrelevant. It's not as prevalent because it is multicultural. There's just interracial marriage. There's different age groups. There's a whole bunch of things. For me, one of the things that I've noticed in regards to is parenting through Zoom, right? Mm-hmm. So I've heard the conversation. Well, hold on a second. He or she is a parent. They're working from home. They have to take care of kids. And the conversation almost came to the lips of one individual to say, well, maybe we should hire somebody who's single and doesn't have kids. Right. And and then Martin just went apeshit.
And this is the thing. I mean, it's still out there. There is still somebody's first train of thought is, oh, they just got married. Hey, oh, she's probably going to be wanting to start a family. So that means she'll probably want maternity leave. Oh, maybe that's not going to work for our business. Like that is still happening.
I know.
And it's the ignorance around, those situations and those circumstances that unless we call it out, unless we give people the opportunity to learn, why that isn't either A, appropriate, or B, conducive to building an inclusive environment, then, we're shot. So we have to continually, make sure we're addressing it, even if we think we're doing a good job, it's probably not good enough.
One of the companies that one of my partner has, he had brought that to attention because it didn't come from a white male. It didn't come from a male at all. It came from a 32-year-old senior leader who said, hey, well, I don't think we should hire a woman because she's going to probably want to have, and he was shocked he was shocked that somebody would actually think about that, and a woman. And I mean, she didn't have kids, didn't want to have kids. And so we don't
knows what their story is. Like,
yeah,
everybody's got their own story, and you can't make any assumptions around that.
exactly. And so he was just completely petrified to the fact that,
and even if she did want kids, that's fine too.
no, exactly. No, what the point I'm trying to make is the leader who did not want to hire the woman because of that was a woman as well. So you don't ever think that it's a male or a white guy that's injecting all of this sexism or ageism.
Well, and that's the interesting thing I think that a lot of us have learned as well over the last year or so, is that we all have privilege, like regardless of who we are. There's an element of privilege there that gives us opportunity that others might not have for no reason for no fault of anybody else's. Mm-hmm. And I'm a female in a male's world, sure, but I have plenty of other privileges which I can draw upon that give me an easier ride or a better opportunity at things that others might not have. Mm-hmm. Just recognizing that each of us have privilege, and then each of us have bias. Like it's totally normal. It's human nature for us all to have bias. And so, it's really important that everybody kind of figures out, okay, what is my privilege? How is that influencing my thoughts? What is the bias that I'm bringing to the table? And once I can recognize it, then I can check myself and challenge myself on it so that I can think differently about some of the decisions I'm going to make. So it's just that self-awareness piece is so key, so critical.
Yeah, I mean, this privilege, I had a long, in-depth conversation over a scotch, and so not all of us always have that privilege, because I know that when I was young, I mean, we were so poor. I would say we couldn't afford the R at the end of poor. So the privilege of it's not just in history, but it's in time as well. So that's a key thing. How do you apply that on your day-to-day with your CEOs?
The privilege and the bias piece, or just
correct?
Kind of,
yeah. Well, I mean, the overall. I mean, I'm sure that you have regular conversations on how to address this. So my question is, on a day-to-day basis, how do you address some of these hard conversations that you talk about?
Yeah. So there's a couple of ways, and both of them have been really open to this. So one of the examples I gave was around kind of putting together a task force that could advise and give counsel to our CEO in the US. We've opened up opportunities for conversations with varying degrees of individuals right across our organizations with the CEOs to, better understand, what their working environment is, what their set of circumstances is. And it brings us back to that listening and empathy piece. Like, it's really hard to be able to listen and be empathetic sometimes at the CEO role, because you get sheltered from so much stuff. It's like, oh no, you can't speak to the CEO. He or she's up there, right? But so it's breaking down those barriers and opening up those opportunities for them to have real, genuine, authentic conversations with a whole bunch of different people that work at our organization, and really kind of looking to dig in, lean into those conversations and ask the awkward questions, ask the uncomfortable questions, and really listen and learn from that and take that forward, and then be able to kind of show up and set the example. And so in a number of our leadership meetings, we've had either guest speakers, or we've had opportunities to brainstorm around certain issues, whether it's around recognition and reward, for example. Like, how do we recognize and reward our people, especially during a pandemic, and especially when we need to, add a layer of inclusivity to it. So let's have those conversations as a leadership team and draw that out. What are the fears? What are the challenges? What are the obstacles to overcome? So it's just creating those spaces for opportunities to have the conversations on a one-to-one level, and then as a leadership team to really kind of try to problem solve and solution for the issues that we're seeing come across our table. So it's just about creating opportunities for conversations.
Fabulous, thank you. What is the one piece of reference? I always say leaders are learners, not necessarily readers. What's the one piece of information that you have carried with you that you say, I refer back to that as 7 Habits, one book. It could be more recent and maybe a podcast. Somebody said something, a course. What's the one thing, Kerris, that you go, when I think of leadership or hashtag getting shit done, this is what I keep in my back pocket?
Gosh, there's a few. I've got a whole bunch of books up here that I'm desperate for my MBA. I would say, other than Get Shit Done, one thing that I think really kind of threw a light bulb in my brain was around radical candor. And I don't know if you've come across that.
No.
So it's worth a Google. So radical candor is really about switching the mindset of people from saying, oh my gosh, I might upset them if I'm honest, and they might not like me anymore, or I don't want to upset them, I don't want to hurt them if I tell them the truth, to it is being unkind not to tell somebody something, to give them
politically correctness is not good. Hallelujah. Thank you.
That's right what I said. It's about providing people with feedback. Mm-hmm. And the thing that stops us from giving feedback is our own fear of how it's going to make us feel. Like, is it going to be awkward for me? Am I going to be uncomfortable? Oh my gosh, I might upset them. They might not like me anymore. Mm-hmm. Like, the thing that would stop me from giving you feedback is my own issue. So if I can just put myself out of my comfort zone for 5 minutes, suck it up, and give you the feedback, then you're going to be able to take that feedback and do something with it. It's human nature for us to want feedback. Tell me how to do better. Tell me how I can improve. Like, we're always asking for it, but leaders can sometimes struggle to give that feedback because they're afraid of how it's going to make them feel. Mm-hmm. So it's unkind and selfish of me not to do that. Like, if there's some feedback I could give you that would really help you with your career, with your, whatever it might be, then, I should suck it up for 5 minutes, put myself outside of my comfort zone, and tell you what that feedback is. Don't be an asshole about it. Be nice, but giving that radical candor, and that kind of really shifted it for me, and it made me, change from an individual who was sometimes afraid of giving feedback because I was worried about how that would make someone feel or how it would make me feel, to really kind of saying, actually, it's unkind of me to hold it back. Like, if I don't tell somebody something, they don't have the opportunity to improve or to change.
Leadership, when we do performance management, performance leadership, call it whatever you want, right? So it's simple. What have you done, right? So what have you done in the past week? So let's go. So weekly performance interview, one-on-ones, call it whatever you want, touch points. So what have you done in the past week, right? So I've done this, I've done that. Then you provide 2 types of feedback. People say, well, I'm going to give you criticism or positive criticism. That's just horse manure, because criticism, blocks the individual, right? So I'm going to say, I'm going to give you positive feedback. Well, that's great. And what you're going to say, negative feedback. So the terminology that we use is that in the feedback engine, you give success feedback, meaning that I've set direction and you're clear on your path. You're successful in achieving the direction that I've asked you to take. Mm-hmm. Then the second one is guidance feedback. Can I offer guidance? So it's a gentle way of saying, hey, you've steered off the direction that you've got. Now, let me redirect you or guide you back. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people tend to forget that. And 3 simple things: driving a car, context, action, result. What's the context? What's the action did you do? And what's the result? And then same thing when you're offering guidance. Here's the context, here's the action, here's the impact or the negative result that you've had on the organization. Yeah. Ask open-ended questions. Like Kerris said, you listen, you ask questions. Your candor is a little bit more precise in the question. What were you thinking? Because maybe you're working off assumptions. Mm-hmm. And here's the alternate action and alternate result that you should have and that you should aim for. So no, that's radical candor. That's I don't like politically correctness. That's why we use explicit on the show. But it's true. You can't, I've had 7, 8, 9 CEOs that didn't like conflict. Oh, Martin, you take care of that. That's an HR situation, right? Okay, well, they report to you, man. Like, talk about it. And guys are just so, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. I don't want to be the bad guy.
Yeah.
You're just being, you're okay. She's a lady. Stop thinking about it. Would it be different if she was a guy? Like, she needs guidance. And it's, no, that's really, really good. So now that you've completed your MBA,
yes,
now you've been a VP for a year. COVID is over. No, just kidding. What's next on your get shit done list, Kerris?
Oh my gosh, so much stuff.
Okay, give me two. Just give me two. Top two.
Top two. Okay, so one thing that we're doing at the moment is that we're making a mind shift towards Agile, like in people services in HR. So
like technical Agile, like Scrum and backlog and Sprint. Yeah. Oh, you're stealing my ideas.
I am. We're taking that whole concept of Agile that they use in software development, as you say, and all that kind of stuff, and we're getting trained and certified as Agile HR practitioners. And so,
congratulations! Yay! That's so cool.
So cool. So we're going to completely dismantle the way that we run our programs and projects, and we're going to flip that script right over to Agile. It's so there's so much to do in HR, and there's so many opportunities, and people feel so much pressure, and running a project or a program is just so time intensive and so resource heavy that and often it's done in a silo without really getting the proper feedback need from the client, which is our people and our professionals and our leaders. So it's done in a silo without that proper feedback, and it's launched, and then we walk away and we go on to the next one. And it just seems crazy. So I actually picked up the idea in my MBA class in the IT module when we started talking about Agile and Scrum and Kanban and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, a minute?
Yeah, there is 1,000 different ways of doing it. Kanban, sticky notes. It's similar as sales, right? So you go from your prospects. How do you move the needle from left-hand side to the right-hand side, right? How do you move a prospect from being a cold prospect to a warm prospect to a sale? It's no different. What I love the most is that you don't have to overthink it. You go to your backlog, you groom your backlog, you prioritize your backlog, you build a sprint, and then sprint to sprint, you verify your sprint velocity, meaning how good are you at solving problems? Very measurable, very, very measurable, very team-oriented, especially I have a personal tech, I have two actually, tech industry clients, and man, oh man, you talk about introverted and a very white male dominated. There's two girls in the organization. So, you talk about that the principle, if you apply diversity to that set, holy crap.
Can you imagine? We're going to take on the world.
I'm so proud of you. You guys are going to crush it. You guys are going to crush it. The one thing that I would caution you about with Sprint is that things are very box-like. So you're a stakeholder, you're a product owner, you're a scrum master. It's very boxy. So I would just, that's not my role. That's the scrum master's role. Oh, that's not my role. That's the PO's role. So that's the one thing that I would caution people is don't fall into this chasm of it's not my job. Right. That
is really good advice. And it's one of those where, we're going through the theory, certification right now. But we're starting to have conversations around how we operationalize it once we the other end of that, kind of in the second half of this year. I'm working with this same company to really understand, okay, how's it going to work at Colliers? It doesn't necessarily we don't need to take a blueprint or a cookie approach, but say, okay, how are we going to apply this in the Colliers world? Like, I genuinely believe that we're already set up to be successful because we are a deeply decentralized organization that's incredibly entrepreneurial and enterprising. Like that, if you have to describe Colliers in 12 words, whatever that, however many words that was. That's how you would describe it.
Yeah.
Someone said, what's Colliers like? It's deeply decentralized, enterprising, and entrepreneurial. And so with that mindset and that culture already present, I think the ability for us to introduce an agile working methodology and principles and philosophy is going to be hugely successful. But we have to make it work within the constraints of our organization, as well as within the constraints of HR, because there's certain things you can't do because it's not legal.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I mean, there's Miro, there's Monday.com, there's a list of software that can permit you to whiteboard, do good storyboards. I mean, I think the storyboard is, because I was thinking about this, as you go from hire to departure, right? Mm-hmm. So what's the story of the individual? Who owns what part of the story? So you go, well, if we're a people organization, you can tell the story of one individual, and how do you apply project management or sprint planning to this? You got me excited. Now we're talking about process. What's the second thing? Sorry, before I go off in my tangent little world of project behaviors and systems, what's the second thing you're tackling?
The second one is to talent management. Like it's such a sweeping term, but as I kind of alluded to earlier, it is the number one priority for Colliers. Like how we recruit, develop, and retain our people involves probably about 27 different talent management products, programs, processes, or practices.
Holy shit.
And there's a tangled web of how they're interlinked. Mm-hmm. And we do a lot of them, and we don't do some of them. And we have a program for this, and it's over here, and we have a product over there for that. But how do we actually connect the dots and have a cohesive, strategic way of managing talent in Colliers? And so it feels joined up. It feels like you get an experience when you come and work at Colliers that, cares about your development, that cares about you as an individual, or you as part of a team, or you as part of a business unit. So we're really looking to kind of dig into that talent management piece and connect the dots, join up the writing, and really have a cohesive strategy behind it going forward.
My goodness, that is performance management is so.
That's a big part of it.
It's so complex, but yet so simple in concept, right? How are you doing? And people ask all the time, "Hey, how you doing?" Well, how do you measure how you're doing, right? How do we ensure that we facilitate and elevate? Facilitate the work, remove the barriers. Leadership is simple. Get the stuff out of the way so that they can be better at what they do. And then elevate them. If there's something that they can't achieve or they can't get to, and it's the only time that I'll use the word can't, then elevate them. Either you support them, provide them the training, provide them the support, create that circle of safety where they feel comfortable in taking risk for you and the organization. Like, oh, sorry, you got me on two things now. You got me on my process soapbox, and you got me on my leadership soapbox. So, Kerris, thank you very much for being on the show. Like, I could go on for at least another hour talking about this. So, are you okay if people want to reach out to you?
Absolutely. Yeah.
How do they get a hold of you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, so just look me up there, Kerris Hougardy. And if not, then reach out to me at kerris.hougardy@colliers.com.
Fabulous. Thank you so much for being on the show, Kerris. It was wonderful. Wonderful to see you again. Kerris and I met through Women in Mining, like 4 years ago, 5 years ago? I forget. Anyways.
That, but it feels, maybe
112 years ago.
It feels like it was a lifetime ago.
I know. With that said, again, thank you very much, Kerris, for being on the show.
It's great to be.
My name is Martin Hunter. Thank you, everybody, for listening and watching. And I'm the host. Oh, I always forget. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. Like, I don't know what to say. But anyways, I said it so Michelle can get off my back. I'm the host, Martin Hunter, of What CEOs Talk About. Thank you very much for listening, and catch us at the next episode. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to What CEOs Talk About. Make sure to click subscribe to get notified about future episodes, or check us out at www.whatceostalkabout.com.